I'm Gilbert Cruz, editor of the New York Times Book Review, and this is the Book Review Podcast. It is peak days of summer here. It's great for those of you who love the heat. It's great for those of you who love the feel of sun on your skin, the grit of sand between your toes, the buzz of powerboats on the lake. However, it's also great for those of us who love to take a road trip. I have Dwight Garner, Alexandra Jacobs, and Szalai, staff critics for the Book Review, here today with me to talk about their latest project, looking at books across multiple decades. This one focused on the great road trip books since Jack Kerouac's On the Road. As they write in their intro, summer is the season for road trips, for tapping into that broad and baked-in American narrative of adventure and individualism. Dwight Garner, welcome back.
Hey, Gilbert. Glad to be here.
Alexandra, hello once again.
Hi, Gilbert.
Jen, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Let us start with, briefly, On the Road. Let's get out of the way. There's a book I read once in college, never again, though when I was an idiot in my 20s, I thought the quote, "The only people for me are the mad ones," et cetera, I thought that was the most romantic and best quote ever. I didn't know anything about life. Dwight, tell me about On the Road.
Oh, Gilbert, I'm such an old cliche, the Gen X Dwight Garner. This book changed my life, and it changed my life to the extent that, A, it sent me out there into the world myself, hitchhiking, traveling, trying to find a different place. I was a suburban kid who wanted out, and this book helped get me out. But it also turned me into a reader in a way, A, because I loved it, B, because it sent me in search of all these beat writers who then sent me in search of all these 60s characters, the Jim Carrolls and the Velvet Underground, and this whole world that this book cracked open for me. I'm so glad I found it when I did.
Jen, not a fan.
I have to say, Dwight, when hearing you talk about it, now I'm like, oh, I should try again to read it. I've never actually finished it. I feel like it's one of those experiences for me that I just felt pretty early on in the book that I can't get into the voice. The sort of rambling quality of it turned me off. I don't know, again, to hear Dwight talk about it that way, okay, maybe I'll try again.
That's a sign of a good critic. Alexandra.
I loved On the Road as a window to the beats and just learning about the beat world and what that was. And now when I look at it, I cannot believe that most of the guys in the book are in their 20s, because I think of the adventuresome and looseness of their travel as opposed to Gen Z and their TikToking and their geolocation and all that. So I'm probably somewhere in between these two.
Let's talk a little bit about what makes a good road trip book. Each of you writes about several books on this list. There are 18 on the list. What is it about the novelistic form maybe that is able to capture the movement, Dwight, the energy, the freedom of an ideal road trip?
It's such a flexible form, Gilbert. You can do anything with the road trip idea. And so many novels, even that aren't road trip novels, contain scenes where one or two of the major characters flees the house and goes away for a few days just to escape what's there, often fleeing in search of something else. And it's, as we've said in the introduction, and we've all know, this is part of the quintessential American narrative. The westward expansion, manifest destiny, moving west. And that's why I think most great road trip novels are from east to west, not all, as we've made clear in our selection. Also, it's fun. I tend to like anyway, characters who are around other characters, being where the people are in my narratives. But it's great when someone of a voice who has a lot going for it escapes and goes out by themselves and gives you a chance to meet this character alone in their thoughts while rushing through the American landscape.
The car is also just a great place for conversation. You're trapped. So, there's absolutely, you got to have dialogue. If there are multiple people in the car, you have a stage set for dialogue. It's just such a plot mechanism because you're going to encounter unexpected things along the way and unexpected people.
What did you discover, Jen, in writing about some of the books that you wrote about here?
One of the things that I was also interested in were the road trip books that defy the convention of the road trip books or turn it on its head. And so there was a book that I picked, Sing Unburied Sing by Jesmyn Ward, which is really road trip novel turned into a ghost story. And another book by Valeria Luiselli, The Lost Children Archive, which takes these notions of freedom and escape and turns it into a tale of marriage, family, and looking for missing children. You asked the question earlier, Gilbert, about what makes a good road trip novel. I guess maybe the most general answer I can say is, for me anyways, is what makes a good novel in general. And then within that, does it have the road trip as a spine in the book? That was the thing that was on my mind when I was reading these novels.
Dwight, Jen's mention of road trip novels, A Ghost Story, made me think of one of the more recent entries in this project, a book that you wrote about by Lorrie Moore.
Yeah, it's called I Am Homeless If This Is Not My Home. And anyone out there who's read much Lorrie Moore knows that she's just a terrific writer. So fresh in all of her imagery, so funny, so fundamentally humane. And this novel is about a road trip with a man and his girlfriend who is dead. She is undead. And they have undead sex, which is pretty grisly and yet almost winning in a way, in a comic way. And it's an unusual book. And yet Lorrie Moore is an unusual writer, the kind of writer who can pull this kind of thing off.
Dwight, what's the best road trip you've ever taken?
Oh, Gilbert. God, of course with my wife. We went south.
She's not going to listen to this. It's fine. You can say something else.
I did hitchhike. I took 6 months and hitchhiked from the bottom of Florida up to Indianapolis, then all over the American South, and had a lot of crazy adventures along the way. And I look back very fondly on that time, crashing with friends and ending up in some dire spots sometimes. But I proposed marriage to my wife on a road trip through the American South. And this was back before the internet, when you really could get lost. And we had big Rand McNally road atlases in the car, and we would go through. There was a book that foodies loved at the time. Jane and Michael Stern wrote this guidebook called Road Food.
Oh, yeah.
And they listed the best places to eat in every state, funky places, homey places, inexpensive places, groovy places. And we would go through our Rand McNally maps and circle every town that had one of those restaurants in it. And so we would drive through the South, but always being pointed towards one of those circles. And I proposed over fried chicken. And that's my great road trip story.
What was the fried chicken joint?
It was it's a hotel in Tallahassee, Alabama, and it is now defunct, alas. I believe it was called the Hotel
Tallahassee?
Tallassee. I'm gonna screw it up.
Okay.
But that's where it all went down.
You don't go back to Tallahassee every couple of years?
Well, we would, but it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
So it's a little sad.
That's a wonderful
It was
story.
terrific fried chicken.
Alexandra.
The best road trip I ever took. One of my first jobs was working for a travel guide called Let's Go. And I thought I was going to be assigned to research and write about my hometown of New York. And the Let's Go editors decided it would be fun to send me to Los Angeles, where I think I'd only been once. Technically, I did have a driver's license, but learning to drive in New York is not the same as the 8-lane freeways of LA. So I took a friend from college and we drove around Los Angeles. We drove all the way to the Mexican border. We got in a lot of scrapes and I learned how to drive and I saw this other side of America. And we made it all the way to Tucson at one point. It was actually like visiting another planet. That's how it felt. We got in a lot of trouble.
What was one scrape?
There was, wow, I don't know if I should.
You can do it.
I mean, let's just say that there was a shoplifting incident. There was an angry proprietor who on a porch with a gun. There was a squeal of tires. There was some
God.
youthful.
Wow.
It was perhaps Thelma and Louise had recently been released.
You New Yorker, you. That must have been so overwhelming.
It was terrifying.
Now you're an old pro. Jen.
I didn't grow up with a car, so my road tripping has mainly happened as a grown-up and with my family. And we took a trip from Las Vegas through to Death Valley, then down to the historic Route 66, which was just incredible. I felt like I was really immersed in Americana. And Death Valley, I have to say, like a desert for me is really special. I grew up in Toronto, Canada. And so my notion of a desert growing up was based on basically Roadrunner cartoons. So I thought it would be like a cactus and tumbleweed and sand dunes. And Death Valley does have some of that, but it also has incredible canyons. It has salt flats. It has a few mountains. It was really just sublime. So I highly recommend it. How about you, Gilbert? What about your favorite road trip?
I grew up in New York, so I also did not learn how to drive until I was in my early 20s. And I have several that I could talk about. Dwight, I'm going to talk about one that I think you would appreciate. For my 40th birthday, my best friend and I, we took a trip from New York to New Orleans, passing through Nashville and Oxford, Mississippi. And we went to Oxford for food. We went to Oxford for drinks, and we also went to Oxford to go to one of the great bookstores, Square Books, which is actually 4 bookstores on this courthouse square in Oxford, Mississippi. But we went through Nashville, which had amazing food and music, and we went to New Orleans, which had amazing food and music and cocktails, and it was just wonderful. And that whole time, my good friend Heath, who's a wonderful professor, doesn't know that much about pop culture. Very comfortable calling him out here. So I made like an 18-hour playlist. I was like, okay, these are Bob Dylan songs you should know. These are Bruce Springsteen songs you should know. These are Outkast songs you should know. And we just went through the whole thing. It was great.
Awesome. That's awesome. Don't you ever feel, I fight sometimes being a music bully, meaning that I love my music so much that I will be the DJ on the trip, unless someone is there to fight back who has
it is
enough
annoying.
force.
I feel the same way. I feel that it is annoying. I'm trying to own my annoyingness. Do you know you are.
It's driver's choice. That's the rule. Driver gets to choose.
Mm-hmm.
You actually reminded me of a road trip I took more recently with my older child from Charleston to Savannah, because it also ended in a bookstore, that beautiful bookstore with a cat in Savannah, whose name I'm forgetting. My child's musical taste runs more toward the heavy metal. My driving was already being criticized.
Really?
We were in a rented, it was a Mustang. It was very low to the road. It's not the sort of car I'm accustomed to. But anyway, it was beautiful. And again, that feeling of those trees and the different landscape. And it's really just the most marvelous thing about America, that you can just see so many different kinds of terrain.
Dwight, I want to turn to one of the books that you wrote about as part of this project, which is Tramps Like Us. This is a 2001 book by the author Joe Westmoreland.
Gilbert, road trip novels, for me at any rate, are largely young person's novels. The books that at least I read when I was in my teens and early 20s, they made me want to get out of town. And I still feel like that's a big part of what the genre means for me. And this is that kind of novel. It's called Tramps Like Us. Joe Westmoreland, it was published in 2001. It's quasi-autobiographical. It describes his trips when he was in his teens and early 20s, from the heartland to New York City, then down to New Orleans, then out to San Francisco, and in search, like Kerouac was, of kicks and friends and sex and often drugs. And Joe Westmoreland at the time was a good-looking young Midwestern man, and he found all these things. He found friends, he found lovers, he found great times, he found dark times. What's great about this book is it's newly republished this summer. It was published by a tiny press, so first of all, no one would have heard about it almost surely anyway. But it so happens that its book launch party was the same week as 9/11. And so no one noticed it. It just fell away. Even for the writer, it fell away. And in the time since, it's become kind of a cult classic. And what I love about it is that it's very hard for a writer who is older to recapture the voice of a 16-year-old, and then a 20-year-old, and then a 23-year-old. And at every moment in this book, you feel like you're reading a character who's exactly that age, in this Holden Caulfield kind of way, but he's not much like Holden Caulfield except for his dislike of phonies. You just feel like you're experiencing what it was like to be these ages, and it's wonderful.
Welcome back. This is the Book Review Podcast. I'm Gilbert Cruz. I'm here with Dwight and Jen and Alexandra, and we're talking about road trips and road trip books. We have fiction books on here. We have nonfiction books on here. Jen, you wrote about a nonfiction book, a book called Driving Mr. Albert, which came out in the year 2000. It's by the magazine writer and author Michael Paterniti.
It was really interesting to reread it because it felt like a bit of a capsule of the late 90s. So the premise is that Paterniti had heard that the pathologist who performed the autopsy on Albert Einstein's brain when Einstein died in 55, I think, that this pathologist actually ended up taking the brain and keeping it, and also happened to be at one point a neighbor of William Burroughs. So in any case, he decides that he's going to look for this guy, and he finds him. And this guy says that he wants to take a trip to Berkeley to meet the granddaughter of Einstein, and he wants to bring the brain, which has been divided among a number of Tupperware containers. And so
they didn't have Yeti then.
Right, exactly. No thermos. So it's pickled in formaldehyde. So they drive cross country, and Harvey is this really strange interesting figure. He's in his 80s. He is a Quaker. He's got that aw shucks demeanor, but at the same time, Paterniti is well aware that he must be a pretty cunning person to have come into possession of this brain and has kept it for all these decades, although he has also given away pieces of it to people, apparently. So there's all this backstory, and they drive cross country. It's about their interactions. The whole time, Paterniti really wants to actually hold on to the Tupperware with the brain, but he also feels like he can't touch it necessarily in the presence of this pathologist. The whole thing is just a snapshot of a different time, the late 90s. This is the era of cassette tapes and just a different point in American history. And it also gives Paterniti a chance to reflect on who Einstein was, his theory of relativity, how his life and how he fled to the United States, fleeing from war-torn Europe. It's really just such a charming book, and I was glad to revisit it all these years later.
That sounds great. It sounds a little wacky.
It is. I will say Paterniti is, a really great magazine writer and really knows how to tell a yarn. And so it's a really enjoyable book, and there are all these big themes in it and deep thoughts in it, but he weaves it in such a way that it goes down easy. I appreciated that.
He's a great writer. I would never refer to Michael Paterniti, whom I revere, as a hack writer, but it is a move one can do to go on a road trip with something. What's a weird relic? Napoleon's penis. Okay. That's not a good book. But if I take Napoleon's penis on a road trip.
Right. All of a sudden, you've got
all of a sudden, you can just say some things. And anyway, it's a great way for a writer to work material. A lot of great nonfiction books are road trips of a sort.
Hoover's Pinky. Pinky Bone. Alexandra, you also wrote about another nonfiction book, a book about a burlesque entertainer.
Yes, I was amazed that they let me sneak Gypsy onto this list because most people, of course, think of Gypsy as the musical, the latest iteration of which is sadly closing on Broadway in a couple of weeks with Audra McDonald. Go and see it if you can. But Gypsy is the source material for what many people say is the greatest musical in American history. And I'm pleased to report that it holds up. It's certainly a period piece. Mama Rose, as we refer to her, is in charge of this ragtag troupe of performers, including her two daughters, Louise and Dainty June, Baby June, who becomes Dainty June. And they go through all these scrapes, and she's completely determined to make a success of them. And so they troop, TROUPE, around. There's trooping, and a lot of it is in train, but at a certain point in the book, they acquire a Studebaker. It's always a Studebaker in these. Why is it always a Studebaker in these mid-century narratives? But anyway, and it's an amazing document of, it's probably not entirely nonfiction, but it certainly the resourcefulness of this famous stage mother rings very true. There's a moment in this book when wolves are actually at the door of the Studebaker. It's a little heavy-handed, but it's completely charming and worth a reread.
How many times have you seen the musical Gypsy?
I've seen probably about 5 different versions of Gypsy, maybe half a dozen if you count the movie.
Dwight, best road trip snack?
Best road trip snack. Oh, God, I just reviewed a book this week in which a guy eats Slim Jims, which he's cooked on his mail truck. He's a U.S. postman. So I have Slim Jims on my mind, even though I loathe Slim Jims. Sorry. Beef jerky's okay. Road trip snacks. I would go with, what's that yummy popcorn you buy in the bag? Smart Food.
I was just going to say that's the worst one. The worst
powder.
one. The powder.
Oh,
it's disgusting.
It. Delicious.
It's all over the
You
wheel.
get it all over the wheel.
No.
I always look like that. I always look covered with gross stuff. So,
listeners, you should see him now. Alexandra, your favorite road trip snack?
Well, my favorite road trip snack is a date shake. A date
what?
shake. You've never had a date shake?
A what?
Sounds
a date
healthy.
shake. If a rest stop offers a date shake, then you're
okay,
in it.
no one in this room knows what this
Spell it.
is.
Okay,
You have to tell us what it
a date shake is a milkshake with dates, sweetened by dates.
this
so
is
it
not
is
a proper convenience. This is not
Yeah.
a, this
Sounds
is
very LA.
This is very
Okay,
rarefied.
you're
It's
talking-
just like bougie
Well,
road trip
yeah,
snacks.
I think a road trip, the best road trip snack, the best road trip snack is a regional. I think it's worth, if you can seek out the regional cuisine, that's the way to go. Because otherwise you're going to feel depressed, or I'm going to feel
Is this
depressed.
California? Is dates?
That would be, the California, the South, the desert. I'm surprised Las Vegas.
I haven't encountered
Desert
one.
Hot Springs that has amazing date shakes. But I think you got to get, like if you're in Cincinnati, you have to get that spaghetti they do with the meatballs or chili and spaghetti.
That's a great road trip snack.
Yeah, it's not. But you know what I mean? I don't know that.
Yeah, my smart food makes them
Maybe I don't believe in eating in the car. Maybe after having two children.
That's a very valid take.
After 2 children, I don't think you should eat in the car. It makes the car gross.
All right. I love it. I love it. This is what I was looking for.
A drive-in. That's the best road trip snack.
What are you eating, Gilbert, on your road trip?
The stinkiest potato chips you could find. Like Maui onion, like something like that.
Why stinky?
Because to me, that indicates that they are incredibly flavorful. And so I love those. Sorry to the people I'm riding with. And then anything, again, to Alexandra's point, that's like overly regional. I love potato chips. Potato chips are like 33% of my diet on any given day. And so if I can drive somewhere and see a bag that I've never seen before because it's a Midwestern pack of chips or a Southern pack of chips, I have to dip into them.
I have to name one more thing, Twizzlers, because you put them up in your visor and they dangle like flowers, and you pick one out every 10 miles or so. Yeah.
What's yours?
Oh, for me, I will say that Pringles, for some reason, you know.
Can eat them with 2 fingers.
Yeah, they're pretty neat. They come in a good container that's resealable, which I feel like is key if you have kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I never encounter them anywhere other than at a rest stop gas station. I know I see them in the grocery store, but I'm never tempted to buy them. It's just when I'm on a road trip, it seems like, okay, now we're on the road. We're going to eat Pringles.
I think it's like flying and the normal rules don't apply.
Exactly, yeah.
Dwight, you wrote about a book and an author that I have never read, which is my bad because I've always wanted to read True Grit. The Dog of the South by Charles Portis.
Charles Portis, what a weirdo. Portis was a genius, just a sort of master Southern stylist with an off-kilter sense of humor, and everything about his novels is odd and offbeat. I also love, by the way, he wrote a lot of travel writing, and his nonfiction stuff is collected in a different book, which I recommend highly to listeners. But Dog of the South is just this crazy road trip novel. A woman runs away with her husband's best friend, and I believe his name is Guy Dupree, which is exactly the kind of name that Portis would use. And the man goes chasing after them, and this crazy road trip ensues down into Mexico, and there's a van named The Dog of the South that has a part in the book. And someone said about Charles Portis, and I think it might have been Roy Blunt Jr. said that Portis is so gifted a writer that he could have had the kind of career that Cormac McCarthy had if he had wanted to go that way, but he didn't want to tamp down his own sense of humor. He was having too much fun as a writer, and it comes across in this book, like in all of his books.
Jen, I was delighted to see that the last book on this list was an unexpected one, mostly because the road trip that occurs in the book is like a 28-minute road trip or something like that. We talked a lot on this podcast about this book last year. Was it only last year that it came out? Why is All Fours by Miranda July here?
I mean, it just, it's
so funny.
Yeah, I was thinking of it earlier as the reductio absurdum of a road trip. It punctuates the list, I think, in a way where you have this woman deciding that she's going to drive from California to New York City, and then she gets about 30 minutes away from her home, and she's, you know what, I'm just going to stop here and stay at this hotel for a couple of weeks and have this sexual odyssey and redecorate the room, to a tune of thousands of dollars. And everything that, when I describe it that way, it sounds like exactly the kind of book that I would hate, but I ended up really enjoying it. And yeah, it's a different kind of journey.
Yeah. It sure is.
Yeah.
Alexandra Jacobs, tell me about Hearts.
Hearts?
Who wrote Hearts? Who is she?
Hilma Wolitzer is a wonderful writer who happens to be the mother of the writer Meg Wolitzer. And this was actually a book that was recommended to me by my editor, Scott Heller. And I took it out of the library and I was enchanted with it. It's about a 26-year-old widow, and the brain in the jar is her late husband's ashes, and also in the car is his 13-year-old daughter, who's very understandably grumpy because her father's died. The idea is this daughter's going to be rehomed by her brief stepmother. A 26-year-old woman. Oh, and by the way, Linda, the widow, is pregnant secretly. I wouldn't say it's the most unpredictable book in terms of how these two, and I will say young women, because we would never call a 13-year-old a young woman today, and yet she's smoking pot. She's mature in ways that perhaps 13-year-olds of today or might not be. But it's just tremendously warm. It's set in 1980s or thereabouts, maybe late 70s. It's this moment like post second wave feminism, but right on the cut, right when America's about to take a turn toward conservatism. There's an abortion clinic is visited, and there's a demonstration there. And it's a book that takes on big themes in a very light, warm way. And I was charmed by it.
If we were to take a step back from the books that the three of you put as part of this project, would any of you say that you've had a particularly memorable experience reading a book on a road trip? Like you associate a certain book with a certain trip that you have taken?
I get sick when I read in the car. I'm trying to think.
I don't. I feel very lucky because my wife does too. I can read.
You read
are
in a
lucky.
car?
Yeah.
In the passenger seat.
Yeah.
And forget the phone. I want to pass out when I'm on the phone in the car.
God.
Yeah.
Think of how much more reading you could have.
Yeah.
I'm the same.
You can read in the car?
I've
That's amazing.
always.
So we haven't talked about audiobooks yet.
Okay, audiobooks. Audiobooks are absolutely valid.
Carol Burnett reads her own memoir, or one of them. I think she's done more than one memoir. I mean, who doesn't want to drive with Carol Burnett talking to you? What's more comforting or grounding than that? Right?
Yeah, so I have a very different one. I really love John le Carré's memoir, The Pigeon Tunnel, where he reads it. He has this beautiful British accent. And as a former spy, he's very good at doing all the voices of all the people that he writes about, all the different accents. And it's one of those books that I'm not sure it's better than the actual printed version, but it's a different experience.
It's so cozy.
Yeah,
I think I wanted to put that down too. It will actually put me to sleep in a good way.
So now while you're driving.
Yeah, not when I'm driving. Nobody wants me driving, Gilbert.
Yeah. Now I want to take a road trip with you. You've told me all the things I've learned today. Dwight, have you had a particularly memorable reading experience while on a road trip?
Sort of. When my wife and I were just married and broke, and we were in Mexico driving around and bumming around, and I was reading one of my favorite novels. I didn't know that at the time, Jane Ann Phillips's Machine Dreams, and I was making so many orgasmic noises while reading it and reading bits aloud. The Cree said, I want to start, and so we tore it in half, and she started with the front while I read the back, and now it's sort of a prized thing that we have. We've taped it back together, and now
this
it's holding.
podcast is suddenly X-rated.
You guys are quite sensual readers, the two of you. You ripped a book in half.
While making orgasmic noises.
Passionate readers. I just bought a copy of that book last summer. I haven't read it yet, but Machine Dreams.
Get there.
Warn your wife.
I read Lonesome Dove on a road trip through the Southwest. I had left my job at Entertainment Weekly at the behest of my boss. Let's just put it that way. And I was at loose ends, and I took a trip from Austin, Texas to El Paso to Albuquerque to Santa Fe to the Grand Canyon to Las Vegas. And the whole time I was reading Lonesome Dove for the first time, which is celebrating, I think it's 40th anniversary this year.
I think it is. McMurtry has said that he sometimes, in Texas, where you can see for miles, he can read and drive at the same time.
Oh, my Lord.
You know, I would maybe only trust McMurtry to do that. Is there anything that we were not able to get into this list that you wish we
I am absolutely furious that Lolita is not on this list. I don't know how it dropped off. I know it's...
I think it has to do with like years, right?
No, that was...
I thought it just didn't fit our time.
maybe you're right.
Lolita was 55.
Yeah.
Well, it was published in Paris in 55, but it was published here in 58, I think.
Oh, it was?
Anyway,
okay.
Christopher Isherwood once called Lolita the best travel book ever written about America, and it was the first one I thought of. And to my delight, I saw that the Times some years ago published an article by Landon Y. Jones that's followed in Nabokov's tracks. There are many biographies of Nabokov, and there's one that's entirely about his time in America and spends a lot of time on the research trips he took with his wife Vera, because of course he was a butterfly enthusiast.
So you are furious.
I'm furious.
You're not only disappointed, you're furious.
I'm disappointed. I'm furious. I would have written the greatest blurb. It was not to be.
Okay. Missed opportunities.
But instead I'd refer readers to this great Landon Jones article that ran in the travel section in 2016.
Excellent. Dwight,
It's before the time of this project, but I miss not talking about The Grapes of Wrath. I adore that book, A. And B, the things that stick with you about novels are never the things you think should stick with you, but scenes from that book, Tom Joad hitchhiking, getting out of prison, the way it starts, and that truck driver who swerves to hit a turtle, not to avoid it, and while on the road, and little things like that have just stuck with me, and I think that's an undervalued novel to this day.
Excellent recommendation. Jen, is there something that you wish you had seen on here?
So this was a book that also fell outside of the time frame of our project, and it's The Price of Salt by Patricia Highsmith. And it's about the forbidden love between these two women, a shop girl who sees this very intriguing older woman come into the department store where she works, and they start up a relationship and then hit the road. And there's intrigue in it, there's blackmail, there's marital issues, there's all kinds of stuff. And I would have loved to have included it on the list.
And it was originally written under a pseudonym.
Oh,
Claire
that's
Morgan,
right.
yeah,
that's
which
right.
gives it which makes those early copies are especially
Rare.
coveted on the secondary market.
This is the story that was made into the Todd Haynes movie Carol. And for those of you who think that Patricia Highsmith is just the author of the Ripley stories, she's much more than that. It's a very good suggestion. Jen, Alexandra, Dwight, thank you so much for coming on to the Book Review Podcast, as you do all the time.
Gaslighting.
And as you will going forward. Jen, thank you.
Thank you.
Alexandra.
Delighted.
Dwight.
This was fun, Gilbert.
That was my conversation with our critics Dwight Garner, Jennifer Szalai, and Alexandra Jacobs about their recent piece, 18 Great Road Trip Books Since On the Road. Check it out if you haven't already, and email us at books@nytimes.com. Let us know about your favorite books set on the road. I'm Gilbert Cruz, editor of the New York Times Book Review. Thanks for listening.